Hi, my name is Josh LaPerge, reporting here from the EWG Mercury. I'll be your moderator today, and how about our panel introduces ourselves? So, why don't you start?
Tom Newsom, History Department here at the high school.
I'm Marcus Simnini, I'm a student here at the high school.
Tom Mastriani, BMT.
Jordan Salvale, student at EWG.
Bob Quindazzi, I'm a history teacher here at the high school.
And Ron Rounds, I am a teacher here in the EWG TV studio.
Okay, so let's just dive right into it. This isn't the best subject to be talking about. It's something that's become much more prevalent in this past year. So mid-April, we had the Baltimore riots, and went on for a while. So let's talk about the cause of this in the first place. So what is bringing up such a large amount of rioting lately? Because this has become more big in this past year than it ever has before. So why is this coming up now?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily would use the term riot, but I guess we can use that to start with. I think that the proximate causes of the sparks for all of these things are the documented instances of the police killing people, armed, unarmed people, and it's become much more in the public eye, the sheer number of people that the police in the United States actually kill. It's like between 1,000 and 1,500 a year, which is a startling number of people to kill. And there are disproportionately, of course, African American.
Okay, so anybody else? So what do you think also exacerbates this? Is social media involved? Is that part of it, or?
I would like to stem off of what you said earlier on about the topic being talked about from a sociological perspective. We have a term for this. It's called victim discounting. And these issues have been going on for a long period of time. These are ghettos, many of them, these inner city environments. And for a really long time, white America hasn't cared about this topic. And it's called victim discounting. Black on black, fatalities. The mainstream America doesn't really concern itself that much. When the drive-bys start happening in the white neighborhoods, there's a little bit more concern. I think it's an important topic. It's one of the most important topics of our day. We've seen the covers. Black lives do matter, and I'm glad we're talking about it today.
Just about the social media aspect and your discounting, victim discounting. It's interesting to look at that. Their stories are discounted as well. They've been going on for a long time, but I think what's really set it off now is everybody's got a phone, right? So that when there is an incident that happens, and I hate to say it, but the police oftentimes will just lie about what happened, and who are they going to believe? They believe the police officer. Well, now there's the guy with the phone, and the next thing you know, it's up on YouTube. Now, the first one of those was Rodney King, way back 15 years ago, but now it's ubiquitous. It's like there's even the ACLU even has an app now to film the police, and it automatically streams out of the phone onto a website so that the police can't take the phone. So now, when you say, oh, he resisted arrest or he did this, well, maybe he did sometimes, but hey, when they shot that guy in the back, right, or when Freddie Gray here, obviously he was arrested for nothing, and then he ended up dead. So people, and you can get that information out in 2 seconds now.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It also seems like every week there's another news story that's just unbelievable. Like how you said, they shot the guy in the back, and then you can see clearly the police officer drops the taser, and then later on he told in his police report that the guy reached for his taser so he wouldn't look guilty, and it's just ridiculous. I feel like every week since it gets progressively worse, people get more riled up, and that's kind of why the riots are happening more.
Question came up on CNN. There was a talk show. Is the problem primarily a racial problem, or is it more a police, their relationship with the police and the general public? There are other incidents. Matter of fact, the famous one happened probably a month and a half ago. The guy on the horse. If you remember, the guy was escaping. Don't ask me how we got on the horse. That was an odd thing, but he was on a horse, running from the police. The horse bugged him. About 15 police officers of all racial backgrounds really beat him badly. Now the background of the guy wasn't a nice guy, but 15 officers of all racial backgrounds were beating him. Is it more of a police problem as far as their relationship with the community and how they handle their job, or is it more of a racial? Pardon the.
In their environments, like where they're, like more of a ghetto-style environment, they are more likely to be subject to police brutality, but everyone on a larger scale is subject to police brutality. Like, there's YouTube videos all over, and it's not just African Americans, it's white Americans, it's Hispanic Americans, and it's just something that everybody can get worked up about and relate to.
There are a lot of interrelated things going on here. It falls disproportionately on communities of color. Largely that's the war on drugs is responsible for a lot of this, where there's what they call broken windows policing, where they basically just harass people all day long in these communities. Does it happen to white people? Yes, but only poor white people. That's not going to happen, in Barrington. Never, ever in a million years when anything like that happened in Barrington. And then there's the whole idea of, if the police are told, they're told to do these things, not to be brutal, but they're told you're going to go write, 50 citations and you're going to, crack down on crime. And then that relationship develops. And then unfortunately we have the whole system where any kind of complaint of criminal complaint of police brutality is sent to the prosecutor that the police work with all day, every day. And as we saw in the Eric Garner case, we watched a man be choked to death. And they were like, it's all right. Okay? The prosecutor thought, well, he didn't even really put on a case in front of the grand jury.
So it's very unfortunate that, police officers and citizens nowadays are, they don't have the best relationship between, citizens and police officers. So it's somewhere like you're seeing this whole anti-police movement going on. So we're going to take a short break right now, but when we come back, we're going to bring up that. Stay tuned. And welcome back. So over break, Mastriani, you brought up a very valid point that most of the time with social media nowadays, people just bring up things that they just need to bring it up. So elaborate on what you meant by that.
We're to the point now where people react just to react. So without the cause necessarily being justifiable, just because it's a group mentality, a gang mentality, not gang as in inner city gang related, but a gang mentality of people getting together and just saying, hey, let's do this. All right, oh, you're doing it, I'm doing it. All right, we're all going to do it, and let's go riot. And that's how looting starts, right? It starts with an idea and a protest, and that protest turns violent. And once one person turns violent, it's a chain reaction. And so we see these things on or on social media that maybe they're on the edge of crossing the line, and a discussion needs to happen, but that discussion now is being lost in the violence. And then all we do is we talk about the violence, and even for Baltimore, right now we're talking about the violence and not how did this happen, not going back to, I was just listening to NPR, and there's this part of the city that was owned by black Americans that, way back, and then white industry came in, took that area over, and then people that worked there got to own the houses. The white majority took over those houses, started owning them, and then they increased to $400,000 or $500,000 in equity. And this is in the last 20 years. And now that these black the ancestors, the people that had ancestors in the neighborhood, sued for the right to own that land. So the court case, the decision came out, yes, now you do have the right to own that land, but you have to buy it at market price from the people that own it. Well, now this $3,000 house is worth $500,000, so they've lost that ability to increase their wealth. And this story said that it was a chain reaction in the city of Baltimore itself. You know, and it's things like that that get lost and they're rioting. Well, why? You know, and it happens everywhere.
So really what you're saying is like most of what we're seeing on social media is just scratching the surface of what's being actually done in places like Baltimore.
Not that it's what we're seeing, it's that it's the trigger point, right? So we see something at a trigger point and we don't care about going further. Most of us don't care about going further because, you know, news happens, life happens, it happens so quick. You know, every 8 minutes there's a new news cycle going on basically with social media. So, this happened, let's do this. Well, no, look into it. No, but we don't look into it anymore.
Right.
You know, we just react without thinking.
One of the things, I'm going to bring the tech side of it up if you don't mind. This has been discussed really since Ferguson quite a bit, that right now they're wanting every police officer in this country to wear a version of Google Glass where everything is being recorded in real time. Every interaction is being recorded, not only to protect the person on the other side of the police officer, but the police officer, him or herself. Is that something that you guys would advocate for or would support, that everything is recorded?
Statistically, when those devices are worn, there's lower cases of police brutality, resounding lower.
Not only would it prevent them from doing brutality or protect them, but being on camera makes you want to behave in a better way because your boss is going to be looking at you, all of your peers are going to be looking at you.
We're on camera right now. We're all
I was discussing this with someone I met in model legislature this year, and he said that his father works in like storage for that kind of like memory and stuff. And they said with the amount of police officers there are, it'd be a lot of storage, and it might not be possible to like keep it all. So that's the only problem I would see, really.
I agree. I can imagine the company that gets on the ground floor of storing all that data. You might want to put your money in those stocks because that would be an unbelievable thing. But
There are definitely technical and procedural obstacles to the body camera thing. I support it, but that only it puts a mask over it, right? And maybe it lets us know what happened, which is great. But really, what are the underlying causes here? I mean, you know, you have the inequality. That's one aspect of it. But on the police side, you have this whole militarization of the police in the United States. You know, since the war on terror started, the Department of Pentagon has been giving police departments massive quantities of military-style weaponry. We've turned the police force into basically an occupy, and this is not the police's fault necessarily. This is the politicians that are doing these things. They're turning them into an occupying force. The deployment of SWAT teams is like, if you look at the deployment of SWAT teams has gone up like 10,000% since like the middle of the 1990s. Just, you know, no-knock warrants. You can't, and you know, mostly for low-level drug crimes and stuff like that. And so you're not going to have good community relations when the police are constantly harassing people. And they're told to harass people in that they're told that you're giving out all these tickets and you're gonna, you know, in New York, there's so much pressure that they will actually, if you are carrying a drink on the sidewalk, like, you know, soda or anything like that, they will give you a ticket for an open container, and they won't on the ticket they won't write down what it's supposed to be, and that way the ticket is dismissed, but they still get credit for writing the ticket. Well, of course, that means the person who got the ticket has got to go to court and get it dismissed. So it's like that constant harassment. There can never be a good community relation if that's happening. It's just not possible. You know, if you're walking around like looking like this all the time, like somebody's going to pull you over or you know, stop you on the street, that's just, it's an untenable situation for the police and for the public.
have we lost the? It's funny. Again, they were talking about this about a week ago. Have we lost, as a police? Most police departments, have they lost that community involvement that they used to have back in the 60s. The beat cop who knew the community, knew the people. You know, you get the West Side Story thing in your head again, but you know, but do the police, have they lost that community connection where, you know, they used to be involved in things that maybe they don't have time or the budget for?
I think there's definitely models to follow in this country. Something tells me that if effective community policing wasn't going on, there would be considerably more problems in this nation. You know, the police are in a tough situation in that, unlike most of white America, there's no segregation between the police and the communities in which they're policing. They're in those communities. They're around, you know, low, medium, high levels of deviance all the time. To use another sociological term, differential association theory. When you're around deviance so often, it has an impact on you, and you're more likely to deviate yourself. And the police are in an incredibly stressful, difficult situation, and we're capturing how stressful that situation is. And there's basic, you know, there's stress, but there are also crimes being committed here as well. So I would, in defense of the police, this is stressful. In opposition to what we've seen as well, there's criminal activity. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Time magazine used the term assassination when the gentleman in South Carolina was shot in the back 8 times. That's how he summed it up. And I would agree with that.
You know, I would just like to point out also that we have this over-policing of minority communities and poor communities too. And, you know, just in reference to not all crime, but to drug crime, which has been prevalent, way of locking people up. We know that, you know, non-minorities and minorities use drugs at exactly the same rate, but there are no police officers in Exeter, West Greenwich stopping our kids and pulling them over, rousting them, searching their car, and arresting them. Okay? But that's what happens in poor communities because they don't have political power. And so the police go, well, that's the easiest place to go get these arrests. So, and, you know, if you continually get picked on, obviously the reaction is ultimately going to be this kind of thing. And I can only imagine, you know, what it might be like if suddenly the police flooded Barrington, right, and started like arresting. And I hate to pick on Barrington, East Greenwich, or West Greenwich, whatever. You know, they just start arresting kids or searching, stopping, and frisking people, right, because they felt like, you know, you were doing something wrong, or maybe they didn't even feel like you were doing something wrong. And then what would the public reaction be to that, right? What kind of political backlash would there be? So, I mean, ultimately what we're seeing now is almost a political backlash, and especially in like these majority black communities like Baltimore, where I think there's probably going to be some pretty big changes coming in the police department.
And do you think the media, you know, I believe the media has a lot to do with this. I mean, to me, all this is becoming it's becoming entertainment. It really is. And as any topic, and I've got to say, I'm going to pick on Barrington for a second. If you remember about a decade ago, how many problems there were with it started off with the young man who was driving his boat. Someone
Yes.
fell off, and then there was alcohol involved, and 3 or 4 people after that. Barrington was being picked upon, but it was the media. Every single time something happened, a kid got arrested for driving while under the influence. It made the news. It was prime news for a good 2-3 months. If you remember
Sure.
hearing it over and over again. And I do think the media does come into play here, and they're covering it, but to a large extent, they're also using it as entertainment fodder. Something's funny, and
Newsom's jumping in his seat right now. He wants to say something.
I think in terms of media, I'm observing the last couple of months what we've seen in America, taking a revisionist history on the O.J. Simpson case. I never thought I'd go back to that case. You know, this was a superstar athlete who was acquitted. We chalked it up to brilliant legal expertise, the dream team they called it.
Mhm.
Looking at the weakness of the judge involved, but you know, I think that case comes down to something else. In hindsight, that case was about frustration with the Los Angeles Police Department and how notorious their record was with regards to race relations that something like this was believable. They messed up the evidence, or they planted it, or there was institutionalized racism all throughout that department, need to be cleaned up. And I think ultimately that is why O.J. Simpson was acquitted. And I didn't think that way in the early 90s. That's the way I look at it now.
It was only 5 years after the riots in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
After I mean, I definitely think that component was there. And honestly, in revisiting the case, I actually listened to a book by Dershowitz about it. He didn't come out and say it, but I mean, O.J. was obviously guilty. But the Los Angeles police did actually plant evidence. Like, some of the evidence was planted. And that was enough for the jury to be like, all right, these guys, right, again. And then the whole Mark Furman thing, using the N-word and stuff like that. But, this stuff can't, the media coverage, right, it's unfortunate. Like, what do they concentrate on? The mainstream media, anyway, they concentrate on, oh, CVS is on fire, right? Not that they, not that the police in the United States in the first 3 months of 2015 have killed more people than the police in the United Kingdom have killed since 1900. I don't know. Is that a problem? I think that's a problem, but maybe not. I think why can we not address that problem in some rational fashion instead of just saying like, oh, these criminals get what they deserve? Are Americans disproportionately criminals? 115 years, 3 months. That's a pretty big difference.
Valid points. So that is about all the time that we have today for the EWG Mercury. We will see you next time.